Is the UFO mystery reaching out to us from beyond the stars or from beyond the grave? Among the lesser known aspects regarding UFO encounters has been the regular appearance of occult symbols and associated figures that society commonly relates with death, especially regarding the traditions of our past loved ones. This has led a few researchers into the paranormal to wonder if a large portion of the UFO experience may say a lot more about death than it does about extraterrestrials. That's the topic of tonight's show. When our guest reached out and dropped this bomb in my lap, I knew we had to give him his due. The full hour will be spent with our guest, Walter Bosley. So buckle up, my little darklings. Tonight's going to be a wild ride here on the Paranormal 60 with Dave Schrader.
I'm not gonna stand here and listen to this baloney.
You won't float. He doesn't stand for baloney.
Sounds like a lot of supernatural baloney to me.
Supernatural, perhaps. Baloney, perhaps not.
Walter Bosley spent 20 years in U.S. national security and has now been a specialty publisher, approaching 20 years. Walter's first nonfiction book was an investigation into the esoteric engineering of Disneyland, and he has since written several more on subjects ranging from occult serial murder, the 19th century airship mysteries, MK Ultra, and the U.S. Air Force, lost cities in South America, breakaway civilizations, Templar vaults in America, and many more mysteries. Walter's appeared on Ancient Aliens, Beyond Belief, and National Park Mysteries. His books are available only at lulu.com. We have a link up for our guest tonight on how you can find him, check out his programs, and purchase his books. It's all on tonight's program guide. I'm excited to bring our guest in. It's been a while since we've had a chance to sit down and talk. Walter Bosley, welcome back.
Hey, Dave, it's great to be here. I'm looking forward to this.
You know what else I'm looking forward to? Is this January 13th through the 15th. You and I are going to both be at the Fear Fair, the Friday the 13th Music and Mystery Festival. It's going to be a party, folks. Concerts, shopping, paranormal chats with guys like, well, me and Walter Bosley. There's haunts and attractions, variety acts, film festivals, special guests, fun. Check it out. The Fear Fair with an E. thefearfair.com, or if it's easier, just go to darknessevents.com, scroll down till you see the Fear Fair banner, click on it, and then you could get tickets to come on out and see Walter and I. Walter, welcome. Let's dive into this. This was,
Sure.
I get a lot of pitches. I want to come out and talk about ghosts. All right, be more specific. I'm a medium and I speak to ghosts. Okay, be more specific. And your publicist reached out and said, Walter's got a lot to talk about. And I said, well, I need you to hone it down because usually the guest is on for 20 to 30 minutes. And then she sends over this blurb that I just read. And I was like, is he available the whole hour? Because I think this is a cool item I want to get into. Set us back and talk to us about this aspect of your research, starting to tie death, the afterlife, ghosts, UFOs. I need to know where this began for you.
Well, it's actually, you find this interesting, it's just as much, if not more, experience through research that led me to this topic of UFOs and the dead. It goes back to 2014, the year that I finished the third volume of a trilogy of books about what I believe was a 100-year-old serial murder mystery that took place in San Bernardino, California in 1915. It had been, notice the number, a 7-year journey through occult symbolism and some mythological symbolism having to do with Persephone and the goddess Hecate and the underworld and the dead and just some really dark, shadowy things. And I had gone through, experienced varying degrees of really paranormal phenomena is the only way you could categorize it. And 2014 was, in my opinion, the culmination of all of that. And the incident was my one and only UFO experience. Okay. In December of 2014, I and another witness in my household watched this object pretty much just hovering over the house. And he had seen it come in from the northwest towards where my house is. And what was interesting about that is, in the research that I was talking about, there is an object to the northwest direction from my house, which had factored into this mystery for 7 years. It's like a mandala painted on the ground. And I had studied it. I had experienced some interesting light phenomena with it. And I had gone out that day with an associate to measure the dimensions, to finally just really intensely document this thing. And then that night, this UFO appears over the house. And I go into the description. I talked about this at Contact in the Desert, and I've talked about it elsewhere and, on my YouTube channel. But essentially, it was completely silent. It was this glowing dome with a flat bottom, and it was dumping this slag over the side. Just very weird experience. And then it stayed there long enough for me to run in, get a camera. I got photos of it and video. And then it moved on and disappeared into the fog. It was only about probably 50 to 70 feet in the air. Now, nothing during this experience gave me an impression or made me think that this was from outer space. And within the context of the 7 years I had just spent just immersed in this occult murder mystery that had happened 100 years before, what I saw actually fit within the context of that and all the occult and mystical symbology and strange information that I had journeyed through for 7 years. And when I went and did follow-up research, that night and in the next days, it just seemed to have even more connection to what I was doing out at the mandala site that afternoon, so that I can't help but connect it to that. Now, a couple months prior to that, I had a my one and only cryptid experience with another member of the household. I mean, we saw the same thing, a winged, humanoid sized kind of creature. And prior to that, about a month, I had a strange experience with an owl. We're all familiar with the weird owl experiences that tie into this.
Well, let me put this out there for listeners that may not be familiar with the phenomena tied to owls. There are a lot of alien abduction scenarios, UFO encounters where large owls are seen in and around the area, and it is a common perception that perhaps the alien is taking on a form that would seem less threatening or terrifying to us. It reveals the giant dark eyes, the strange shape, all of that. So that's part of this kind of interesting legend and lore surrounding UFO phenomena, but also interesting because owls have played a part in history with death and time as well. So I just want to make sure that for newer listeners and followers who've just jumped on with us, they kind of get that understanding, please.
And on that note, the owl is directly associated as familiar with the goddess Hecate. Now, the goddess Hecate, if anyone's familiar with my Empire of the Wheel investigation, the goddess Hecate factored heavily in that whole mystery. I mean, central to what's going on. And to me, for my interpretation, the appearance and my weird experience with this owl, I thought of Hecate. To me, it had to do with a message from beyond. And a family member died that week, an uncle back east. By the way, my dad's family is from the Parkersburg, Mineral Wells, West Virginia area, the Mothman country. And this is one of the uncles who lived in Mineral Wells, Mothman country, who had passed away fairly close in conjunction to this encounter with the owl. Now, the owl itself, again, like the UFO a couple months later, it parked itself on the very tippy top of a tree in the front yard and stayed there, again, long enough for me to run in, get my camera, and get photos of the thing and video. So I was able to visually document, these experiences. But between the owl and the cryptid creature and then the UFO later, these things were all happening within the 99th anniversary year of the season in which my occult murder mystery took place. The things, the deaths that I had investigated happened in 1915. So in the 99th, there's that number 9, right? 99 is significant. I'm having all these, the cryptid encounter, the weird UFO and all the stuff that I just described. And so I came away from that just, wondering, what the heck was this? What happened? What did we experience? What did we see? And I thought it was intriguing that, there were witnesses with me, every step of the way with this stuff. And, well, I didn't talk about this publicly for about 3 years or so. And it was around that time that I first, an associate, I can't remember if it was Greg Bishop or someone, or Nick Redfern maybe mentioned it or something, that Anne Strieber had postulated a while before that she thought UFOs have something to do with what we call death. And that idea really intrigued me. I thought, whoa, okay, that's really interesting. And, about a year later, I was hearing little comments from people that there were, a few scholars in the field that were really seriously looking at this connection between UFOs and the dead. And again, because of the context of my experience and within what I had been doing for 7 years and the whole Persephone Hecate underworld symbology in that and the phenomena that I encountered, I found that idea to be the most exciting hypothesis presented in ufology since John Keel and Jacques Vallée after him proposed ultra-terrestrials. I mean, singularly, this to me was profound. So I increasingly over, the next couple of years, wanted to learn more about this. And there just didn't seem to be many people that had delved into this that much or could say very much. And then this year, I had heard and then got in my hands a copy of really what is an amazing, outstanding work by Joshua Cutchin, which really is the book on this subject, The Ecology of Souls, which I highly recommend. It's a big tome. I'm working my way through it. But there in that work, he has brought together all the lore, all the symbology, many instances and reports. And what you find out is this has happened a lot. People are having UFO encounters in which deceased loved ones are appearing to them. And in abduction cases, deceased loved ones will show up kind of to comfort them, right? While whatever's going on is going on. And it's just a fascinating concept to me. And
well, let me ask you something, Walter, if I could, stepping in on that.
Sure.
So like the owl, the kind of idea that maybe the perception filter is being altered for us so that we aren't seeing the alien, we are seeing
something familiar.
Right. We're seeing something that it's trying to make itself known as. Do you believe that they have the ability to take on the form and shape of our loved ones in the same way, that it's a perception filter? Or do you believe that there is more to do with death, the spirit realm, and aliens altogether, as opposed to, meaning coexistent, as opposed to one superimposing on another?
Yeah, it's that classic answer, both.
Okay. All right.
I'm definitely coming from the perspective of I absolutely think extraterrestrial civilizations exist. I absolutely think they have visited this planet
Right.
and continue to do so. I do not think that the ET hypothesis explains but a very small percentage of UFO sightings. To me, the greatest majority of legitimate UFO sightings, not the made up ones, just to be part of the fun, the legitimate ones are really people probably seeing some type of classified advanced human technology. But that leaves, in my opinion, my number is roughly 10% for the extraordinary explanations, in which the ET hypothesis is just a slice of that. So if the ET hypothesis is just a slice of that, and it's not secret technology, then we have to consider these multiple hypotheses. And the idea that it could be manifestations of other entities or beings from beyond, I think, to answer your question, that there probably are extraterrestrial civilizations with an advanced technology enough to be able to camouflage themselves in another image. Now, they might be able to use some type of device where they can scan your memories and pull images of loved ones out to kind of screen themselves with, right? That would be the technological possibility. But I also think that the possibility of it definitely being the spirits of past loved ones showing up, manifesting, it could actually be them. But then on the other hand, it could indeed be the ultra-terrestrial interdimensionals that used what they called glamoury when they were identified as the fairy folk, right? If you saw them and unexpectedly, and they didn't want you to see them, they would use this glamoury to kind of cloud your memory or to look like something they were not. So I think all of these are possible. And I know that seems like a easy way out, cop out, but that's what I really think, is that it's all in the mix.
No, I don't think it's a cop out at all. As a matter of fact, I mean, I've mentioned more and more in my work on the show and on other interviews that it's hard to compartmentalize any one aspect of what we're exploring.
Right.
But I like to know where people are leaning into more. I will tell you, Walter, by the end of this interview, and remind me, because I'll get down the rabbit hole with you.
Okay.
And listeners, I am watching your comments. I'm throwing them up on the screen as we go. I'll get to you if you have specific questions. But listeners, remind me of this as well. I'll give you a bomb that I'll drop a little bit later on you regarding an experience. And I've been very reticent to talk about this.
I can understand.
And because, again, it calls into question your credibility and your own sanity. So I'll leave that out there. But remind me regarding the soul,
absolutely,
ghosts and aliens, and I'll definitely hit you up with an interesting concept that we can clip a little bit later. All right. So ultra-terrestrials, we've had a few listeners wondering what that means. What is the correct definition for the term ultra-terrestrial?
Really, the best way that I think it can be described is what we call an interdimensional. Some type of being that can move between dimensions, literal dimensions of reality. Or I like to think of, we have one reality, but it's in a wide spectrum. And we perceive and move within a certain band on that spectrum, but these other beings live in a little bit of a wider band and can move out of our perception, but still be there, occupying that same plane, but we just don't see them. And there might be other things and aspects we don't see. But it could be that each multiple reality has its own spectral band with that, it's the same in all those realities. There's different creatures. And these ultra-terrestrials, to me, the best way to describe them is that they are beings, intelligences that can move literally between the dimensions and in a wider spectrum of the bandwidth.
Okay. All right. So now that we're starting to unpack a lot of this concept and what we're discussing, ufology, paranormal psychology, ghosts, the afterlife, near-death experiences have always seemed to be kind of separated, that they're two independent kind of phenomena that take place but are not interdependent on one another, are not really, other than the fact that we are starting to notice that there are areas where there's a heavy population of ghostly activity, UFO activity, and cryptid activity. And we call these things, nexus points, much like the Bridgewater Triangle area, Skinwalker Ranch, so many of these different anomalous locations that pop up that seem to have a myriad of different type of activity that's witnessed by multiple people. So we're starting to see this thread. So I'm pulling it together for the listeners to follow along. It doesn't sound as foreign. And I know there are people that are like, wait a minute. But again, we've all discussed this just in spoon size bites throughout the years. So this is kind of bringing the concept more together and stitching it. All right, please take over.
Well, for me, another reason why it just impressed upon me that my particular UFO experience had more to do with this theme of the land of the dead was, as I said, Hecate, the goddess Hecate, who is the goddess of the underworld. She stands at the gates of the underworld, and when you die, you must pass, through her gate. And she's the one that, is there tending it. And she's often, because of her, partial association with witchcraft and such, she scares a lot of people. She seems this dark, shadowy figure. I'll be honest with you, when I started my research on my Empire of the Wheel stuff in 2007, that was my perception of Hecate. And as I went through those 7 years, I came away with a completely different perception of her. That was a whole journey in itself. But what stood out to me was the impression that my associate and I, because we had gone out to that mandala that I described, and that's the best way for me to describe it, this large thing painted on the ground, and we had been out there tinkering around it, measuring it and stuff. I wondered if we had not manifested this thing that was in the sky over my house later that night. Now, to add to that, when I went to follow up on the trail of its departure, where it was dumping this glowing hot slag type material, okay, what I found was in the spots that I calculated it had dropped, mushrooms started growing in those spots over the next, starting the next day, sprouting up, and then over the next several months, there were just patches of these mushrooms, which haven't been there since. The mushrooms are associated with the fairy folk culture, okay, and the Tuatha De Danann and such. The other side, the people, on the other side, and I'm thinking again.
And interesting how some of the mushrooms that are being ingested help to open that portal in our mind to make connections with the other side or to what appears to be spiritual beings.
Sure. And again, this just further reinforces it. Okay, this is not an extraterrestrial experience. This is something connected with, I think very specifically also the mysterious Tuatha De Danann, who are the fairy folk, the most classic fairy folk. And the imagery of owls, because that wasn't the only weird experience I'd had with owls. There had also been paranormal activity around the house over the course of those years, and particularly that season. We're talking rappings on the outside of the house. We're talking some footsteps on the roof of the house. And here's what's interesting. There were always witnesses to this. It wasn't just me experiencing this. And it would startle people. There was one night that I came home from a movie or something, and I was the only one at the house. And I had this sense of dread and fear. It was as if there was something outside my house, very bad and dark, that was looking in the windows at me. Now, I'm 6'1", over 200 pounds, and my background, I'd been in the military, been a counterterrorism guy and stuff, and big bad me. I got out of the house that night and stayed in a hotel. I'm not kidding. It freaked me out that much. We're talking, just all manner of paranormal stuff going on after I started poking into these murders from 1915. These mysterious deaths, which I'm convinced are murders, and it just, it was just piling on to culminate in that UFO sighting. Again, I couldn't help but think that it had nothing to do with ETs. It had to do with this other stuff. And that possibly maybe we had manifested it because the mandala was some type of Enochian or Solomonic magical sigil or symbol painted on the ground at, of all things, a church.
Mhm.
And it
And I think people would be surprised to find how many churches and known buildings like that you'll find sigils, you'll find markings, and a lot of times it's believed that they were used to tamp down. Sometimes they were picked specifically to be built in that area to tamp down something negative,
Sure,
to shut
sure,
shut a portal, to
sure.
create a way from keeping things from entering our realm.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. And what had brought me to all this again, to tie this to the land of the dead, so to speak, was after I finished my Disneyland book, which had to do with telluric currents or ley lines. What I wanted to do was follow up that research, and in the book, the Disneyland book, I talk about an intersection of 3 telluric currents or ley lines that the carousel used to sit on top of. Interesting concept. And what I wanted to do after that book came out was follow those lines where they curved and ran through the rest of Southern California. And one of them ran right out here practically through San Bernardino and connected to others. So I focused on San Bernardino, near where these telluric currents and ley lines were at. And what I was looking for was anything paranormal. And I found it. I found a ghost story. I talked with this woman who had researched the mysterious death and told me about it, a lady named Ann Walker, who's a local librarian. And she had told me about this woman, Cora Stanton, who had died mysteriously, and they labeled her a suicide. She didn't think it was a suicide. She goes, go look at the old newspapers, 1915. So I did. I agreed with her, and I found these other 6 deaths. But the ghost story was this stuff in 1915 happened in an old park that used to be in San Bernardino called Urbita Springs. And over the decades, it just kind of faltered. And by the 60s, it was practically dried up. So they built a mall, which opened in 1967. And they built the mall exactly over where the big lake was in this amusement park. And there's at the south end of this mall, which is at the south end of the lake, there's a department store. And there had been instances like the night employees would fix everything up, lock the doors, and when the morning team came in, there would be displays all rearranged, and no one had been in the store at night. Okay, ladies' shoe department, same thing. They would find the ladies' shoes all messed up, like somebody had been perusing them, looking at them. Probably the most interesting and eeriest one was a gentleman was buying some china or housewares for his wife for a gift, and it was in the evening. He and the sales lady and his little girl, about I think 6 years old or whatever, 5 years old, were the only ones in that section, and his daughter was staring at something, and he said, honey, what you looking at? And she goes, the lady. And he and the sales lady didn't see anyone else, and goes, what lady? And she goes, the lady in the old-timey clothes. And over by the China section. Well, what had been happening in the China section was the employees would come back in the morning and they would find the China settings, how fragile those are and how they set them up in little placings. They would find them taken off the shelf and set up perfectly on the floor. Now, if they had fallen, they would have brought down other china and they would have been in pieces on the floor. But no, it was as if somebody lifted them off the shelf and set it up on the floor, like a ghost trying to get someone's attention. And it spooked the employees out, that a lot of the employees refused to go into the back storerooms and such. And this is the story that the librarian Ann Walker told me, and it intrigued me. And that's, I followed up by going to look at the newspaper accounts and found 6 other very questionable, accident deaths or, whatever, suicide, 3 of them children who were poisoned. And this all took place during the latter half of the year, during the autumn, right into December, with all the dark land of the dead, land of Halloween kind of symbolism, and involving, like I said, Hecate and Persephone. And so it was a ghost story, okay, that led me into that 7-year journey, which again then culminates in this UFO experience. So personally, I am convinced it had everything to do with that, and that's why this subject that, you know, others were noticing and others were noting and others were presenting this hypothesis that, yeah, this is going on more than people realize. And it has a side that it's so intriguing that it's hard to let go of. You find yourself like a paranormal investigator, you find yourself getting very familiar with all the cemeteries, and you know, going into places at night that you might not otherwise go, except it's fascinating. And if you follow the journey far enough, you know, begin to learn some very interesting things that express themselves through synchronicities and you know, your own personal life data, which a good friend of mine refers to as karmic frequencies. And again, it all comes back to tied to what happens to us, you know, after our bodies die, what really happens. And
well, let's do this, Walter. Let's use this moment to take a quick break.
okay.
When we come back, we'll continue our discussion with Walter Bosley. Are we actually being visited by the dead? What of the myriad of other denizens reported and believed to exist in the other realm? What if a UFO encounter might actually be a visit from the Grim Reaper? Our guest Walter Bosley stays with us for the next segment as we continue to look at these and examine these aspects and so much more. Remember, you can come on out and see Walter and I. We're going to be in Southern California, San Bernardino at the Fear Fair, January 13th through the 15th. It's going to be a party. You can check out darknessevents.com for all the related information regarding that. Let's just go real quickly through this. Egypt. Folks, I'm telling you, we have 2 spots left open. You do not want to miss this opportunity. There's also 1 year same as cash financing available. If you would like to sign up, you can check out the information. Go to darknessevents.com, click on it. Come on out, spend some time with us. We're going to get to investigate so many interesting elements and aspects of the paranormal and things that are outside our paranormal paradigms. I can't wait for you to be there with me. Plus, we get access to Howard Carter's home at the time of the 100th anniversary of the opening of King Tut's tomb and the curse of King Tut. So make sure you check that out. You can get information at darknessevents.com. And maybe you want to stay a little closer to home. Well, you can search the mysteries of Savannah, Georgia with me. You can explore one of the most haunted cities in America, Savannah, Georgia. Shane Pittman and I will escort you through the pathways of true grit hauntings. Be part of an exclusive and private investigation of 2 stellar locations, the famed Savannah Theater and the unforgiving Moon River Brewery. March 2nd through the 5th, you can come out, be a part of this tour, be a part of this trip. We're going to do a lot of teaching, a lot of learning for you guys so that you too can understand a little bit more about the supernatural. All that information's up on our site. And with very few tickets still remaining, join Shane and I as we go back behind bars at Old Joliet State Prison, May 5th and the 6th. There are a few of the VIP 2-day tickets still available. That gets you in for the daytime tours, the nighttime investigations, the daytime presentations. There are 1-day event tickets available. So if you'd like to join us, again, darknessevents.com. And I'll be seeing you all over the United States as I return to Ohio State Reformatory, Mansfield Reformatory in Mansfield, Ohio, this May for Parapsychon 4. It's going to be an amazing time. I hope you'll come on out for that. And the 9th annual New Jersey Para Unity Expo has become one of my favorite expos. And now 2 days, November 4th and 5th. It's been one day. So many people have tried to attend and have to be turned away at the door that they have extended it to 2 days to accommodate everybody. You can find more information again at darknessevents.com. And did you know it's now easier than ever to listen to the Paranormal 60? You could take us on the road with you, listen to us anywhere you want, because we are available on just about every major podcast player in the world. So check it out, subscribe and listen, take us along. And for those of you that are listening and want to go check out the videos on the YouTube channel, I know it could be a little confusing, but when you go to the Paranormal 60 YouTube channel, you're going to find different titles. You'll find videos, you'll find live, you'll find shorts. Click around, because under the live, you'll see all of the live shows. Under videos, you'll see special videos that we're going to be putting up, special interviews, special little movies, special documentaries, things that won't be a part of the regular episodes, but you can still tune in and check out. As a matter of fact, for those of you families out there that would like to have a fun little night with your kids this Saturday, you could spend a half an hour with your pal here at Paranormal 60 and Huckleberry Hound and his friends as they go aboard the ghost ship. And we'd like you to sit down with your kids and family, tune in and listen in. It'll be there forever. So for when you want to tune in, you could check it out and spend some time there. But let's do it together this Saturday night. It's going to be an absolute blast. And speaking of the holidays, they are upon us. It's time to get the perfect gift for that perfect someone in your life. You know what I'm talking about. The Paranormal 60 protection and energy bracelets. They're out. They're available now. The 2022 editions are almost sold out. You can get information and how to order them. $40 a piece, $7.95 shipping and handling in the United States. I've got size 7, size 8 available. I am a size 8. If you need special sizes, we can have Moxie Mollis, the professional jeweler who creates these beautiful pieces, specially alter them for you to make them larger or smaller. Larger may be a few dollar extra fee because they will be adding more actual gemstones. These are not plastic or glass beads. They're all hand-selected, perfect gemstones meant to balance you, protect you, help bolster your energy, and give you protection when you enter these paranormal sites. Again, you can get more information and check it out by going to paranormal60.com and click on the store tab, scroll down, or just email me, Dave at paranormal60.com to place your order. All right. It's time we get back into the show. Walter Bosley is patiently waiting. I know many of you are patiently waiting. I'm watching your comments. You guys are psyched about the show. I'm psyched about the show. And stay tuned. In a little bit, I'm going to tell you a very weird and interesting element that includes the black-eyed kid phenomena. So stay tuned for that. But tonight we're talking with Walter Bosley about the afterlife, UFOs, death, and maybe interdimensional, ultra-dimensional beings. And what does this all mean? Are we talking about a matrix type situation, Walter, where there are multiple layers of existence that are there and maybe bleeding into one another, allowing these opportunities to be seen and experienced? Because I'll tell you, I've listened to many alien abduction scenarios where a person wakes up in bed being hovered in the air as they float through the glass. And I've often thought, are they truly going out, or is the soul, is the energetic matrixing of our being what's truly leaving? Is the physical form there? Is this a ghost? And is this what the aliens or the ultra or interdimensional beings are actually communicating with? Are we talking about elements like that, or am I way off base here, Walter?
I think we, like, before, I think we definitely may be. It certainly has to be in the mix. You have to consider. The way I do my research, I try to leave myself out of it. I mean, I was experiencing paranormal stuff galore during that 7-year period, especially that I was working on the Empire of the Wheel books. None of the Empire of the Wheel books are about me and my journey. They were about the subject I was investigating. I try to leave myself out of it. I've written one book about my experiences, and it's one of the thinnest books I've written because my research is not about me. But when you're encountering this stuff, you have to consider, okay, what am I supposed to take away from this? What am I supposed to get out of this? And there's two things come to mind on that particular issue for me. Number one is Hecate and what she represents. And as I said, I went through this evolution of understanding this figure Hecate. And by it was interesting is by that fall, just a couple of months before I had this UFO experience, and during the season of having, these other weird encounters with the cryptid and the owl, I had come to kind of an illumination, an understanding, and enlightenment about Hecate. Now, I will say this: Hecate is thematically and historically associated with the Egyptian goddess Isis. Okay, and in particular, the veiled Isis. Okay, and what they say about the veiled Isis is, if she lifts her veil to reveal her true nature, her truth, you are to tell no one. In other words, you're not to deprive others of going on that path and journey themselves by telling them the secret. And through these paranormal activities and through a particular dream that I had, again, that fall of 2014, I awoke with what I believe was an epiphany about Hecate and what this this gate that she guards in the underworld after we die is actually about, and what it is she's actually showing you when it's your time to face her. And
Can I've got to interject one really weird thing, Walter. Doing this show, and I should be embarrassed. I've been in this for 17 years.
yeah,
I'm sure I've heard Hecate before
Sure.
mentioned. I've no information or knowledge of this. And earlier this year, I had a moment where I thought I might be facing cancer, and I had a very strange dream, and I remember calling out in the stream, "What's happening to me?
yeah.
Where am I going to go?" And it said, "Hecate will take care of you." And I'm like, "What?" I said, "What is Hecate?" And it said, "Hecate, Hecate, remember Hecate." And I'm like,
Wow.
"What is this?"
Okay.
And legitimately, I reached out to a friend of mine that's
Yeah.
involved in the Wiccan environment, and I
Sure.
said, "I got a weird question for you. Here's a dream. I think I might have cancer. This is what I was told." And she said, "Honey, you're going to be just fine. Hecate is going to take care of things." I'm like, "Okay, I've heard that before. What the hell does that mean?" And she again kind of gave me some of her insights into this. But
Yeah.
it's interesting that your story is so deeply involved with Hecate. And before this year, I had no real working knowledge or understanding of what a Hecate or who a Hecate was. I've grown up Christian with that Christian
Sure.
belief.
Yeah,
That's
me
never been a
too.
part of
Yeah.
my
Right.
evolution. It wasn't like the Virgin Mary will take care of you. Christ will take care of you. It was none
It
of
was
that. It
Hecate,
was
right?
Hecate. And I'm like,
Yeah, I
what?
I came away after those 7 years. At that point, I saw her more as a guardian type, more as a comforting figure. But it's funny you mention what you just mentioned in relation to Hecate. Um, in 2018, about 4.5 years, actually, summer 2018, after I'd had all these encounters and this UFO experience in particular, um, I began to show some symptoms, which by summer 2019, I went and got tested. And in March of 2020, the day before the quarantine was called, um, I was diagnosed with cancer. And I went through chemo for 6 months of 2020.
Wow.
And came through it. So far, so good. Knock on wood. I've been doing my 90-day checkups. I've been all clear. But wow, what you just said there resonated with me very deeply, because I have wondered, was part of my experience anything to do with her informing me that I was going to go through this potentially, life-ending condition, and just hang in there, have faith, you'll make it through. So I think you're absolutely, in my personal opinion, with my experience, I think you're spot on equating some type of communication there from her, because she is the goddess at the triple crossroads. Okay. And at the gate to the underworld. Now, Gate implies the beginning, right? An opening, the doorway. Okay. So what is the implication? When you die, you face her first. Now, of course, in Christianity, we have, St. Peter at the pearly gates, that kind of thing. It's interesting. We have this figure, at a gate, the triple crossroad. Do your own thinking. You'll figure out what that triple crossroad is and what she actually represents and what she's actually the guardian of and why she would be in the position to maybe warn you or give you a heads up like she did, me. It makes perfect sense. But also what it did, and I think this is part of her function, her job, was as if the close calls I had in my profession in Iraq and elsewhere, guns in my face and other stuff, if that apparently didn't get my attention to remind me how mortal we are. Apparently I needed this brush with cancer to realize, oh yeah, that's right, we're all going to meet Hecate sometime. And what it did was, I have to admit, I started looking at things, doing things differently, because, hey, it reminded me, that the clock is ticking. And I can't help but think that, because of my, putting myself in proximity to her and all that phenomena and all them things, all those intelligences, they say when you look in the abyss looks back. It's the same
Right.
thing. You look at, she lets you know in her familiars. I mean, I've had raven visitations. I still do. Owls, the whole thing. And, I wonder if, that she was communicating with me. At some point it was like, okay, pretty soon you're going to have your own brush with this and be reminded of your mortality. It's time to get on the ball and, start advancing with certain things. And like I said, fortunately, I'm, making it through. And
we're glad you are. Hey, I
yeah,
do want to
well,
address,
you
there are
too.
some of
I'm
the
glad
people in
to.
the chat room
Yeah.
that I'm watching, and some I can already see taking a personal affront to some of this, or maybe misconstruing. And I know I'll get the emails of, Dave, you're going to the dark side. You're throwing away Christianity. I think you're leading to atheism. No,
Yeah.
I'm opening my mind to the concepts of a bigger, grander scale to things. Like the Bard said, right? There are
Yeah.
more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy. So I think that by even marginalizing the fact that there is so much more to the religious
Yes.
experience than just the
Absolutely.
3 characters or 4 characters we're given, I think there are other key elements, because you have to realize that there are many versions of these stories told through time and tide, through many different ages,
Sure.
that predate Christianity.
Yes.
So,
They do.
and there's a narrative thread, but the main thing is that don't be a dick, be a
Well,
good person. That's what it really boils down to.
yeah,
So that's a big aspect of it.
unfortunately, Christianity has evolved into something called churchianity, and that's
Right.
where a lot of folks are coming from, and they've been conditioned to. These things are scary. Okay,
Mhm.
these things are scary because I grew up in the same kind of Protestant Christian environment, and my experience with that is my own. I believe in God. I myself,
Right.
am a believer, but churchianity doesn't do it for me. That's a whole other discussion. And these things, fear is often a thing that's you're made to go through to test your courage. And
Right.
fear of these things. What I learned about Hecate is she's far more than just the icon for witches. I mean, all due
Right.
respect to the witchcraft community. I'm not, personally subscribing to witchcraft, but all due respect to them, they don't own her. Their thing is just a slice of what Hecate is about. Ultimately, what
Right.
I found what she's about has little to nothing to do with witchcraft. And I don't mean that as an insult. It
Right.
just,
No,
from my
I totally
experience,
get that.
what
I
it is.
get that concept. Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. There's going to be a lot of people that are not comfortable with this whole. I've got close friends that have expressed that to me. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh. But I consult regularly a man who is an Eastern Orthodox bishop and a very well respected theological scholar.
Mhm.
And so I mean, I'm careful. There's things I don't do, I mean, the obvious, I don't play with Ouija boards and stuff like that, but there's things I don't do, that because of the things I was taught, right, as
Mhm.
in youth, about Christianity, and I take heed in them. But it's like I say to my associates that say, "Ooh, don't do that." My scholar associates, I say, "Remember, I'm a field ops guy. Okay, I'm the guy
Mhm.
that goes out in the field, so you don't have to." And
Right.
the way I look at it is, for me, you got to have courage to go investigate stuff, and it's going to take you to
Right.
scary places, and scary things are going to come to you.
And growth only takes place when you do something outside of your commonplace, right?
Yes,
We
that's right.
all started sitting in one place,
That's
and
right.
then it was having the courage to crawl, the courage to stand, the
Right.
courage to let go of the couch and walk across the room to mommy. So
Yeah.
everything is about pushing beyond your comfort zone,
Oh,
and
and
that's what this is all about.
another thing too is we're talking
Mhm.
about, for instance, this particular entity figure, Hecate. At no time do I, pray to Hecate.
Right.
She's not my savior, not my God. She, in my opinion, is this thing, this entity that exists and represents, what she represents. But you know, I don't put my
Coexistence, right. No,
spiritual
I
faith
got you.
in it. Just because I
Right.
can recognize the existence,
Right. Right.
it doesn't. I'm not afraid of her. I'm
I
not afraid.
appreciate that, and I don't wanna feel like you have to answer to anybody about that. I just wanted
Oh,
to
I don't.
address that, sometimes with listeners, they start getting very,
Sure.
rankled, and the important thing is, even if you don't understand something, it's okay to listen to it
Yeah.
and hear
Oh, yeah.
because, right, it's always good to know what the enemy's thinking. So keep that breath
There
of
you
thought,
go.
right?
Yeah, and why
But
not?
yeah,
And you know what? We need to move out of this
right,
period we're in where everybody's afraid to talk about things. We got to get back
right,
into discussion is how we share ideas and learn things and determine what, hey, I don't agree with this or I don't agree with that. But it's good to have the discussion, so and it's important because it's knowledge.
right.
It's all knowledge.
Well, we're closing in on the end of our hour, and I know,
Okay.
yes, we can always go over a little bit because I have time travel capabilities on the show that I can push the 60 minutes as
Oh,
far out as I want.
all right.
I'm Dave Schrader, and it is my show. So, but I want to get to the meat of this and kind of
Okay.
go. So, where are you now with this philosophy of terrestrial, extra, ultra, interdimensional beings, life, death, and what's going on with the UFO culture right now? What can you kind of what meat can you give us from that?
To me, because for a long time now, to me, the extraterrestrial hypothesis is just such a small slice of the explanation of the whole ufology mystery, that I find that while several things at once are involved, I think it is these mostly. Well, not mostly because of the technology thing, but more so than ETs, I think there is something interdimensional, spiritual, mystical going on, and I find honestly this idea of it being associated with the dead, the afterlife, to be sincerely the most exciting hypothesis in decades in ufology. And again, I strongly praise. I'm not the publisher of it. I'm not a co-author. I am a scholar. An experiencer. I strongly praise the work of Joshua Cutchin, Ecology of Souls. And if you're interested in this, he's the first and only one who's done the first comprehensive look at this. And so, if it interests you, that book, The Ecology of Souls, is, again, in my opinion, the most important book in ufology in decades. In decades since
I'll put a copy of
the
that
early
book. Is
90s.
if it's available on Amazon, I'll make sure
Yeah,
that it's
it
in my
is.
Paranormal 60 shop. So just go paranormal60.com, go to the shop tab, scroll down to our Amazon page, click in, it'll be right in there in the
Mhm.
book section. So go check that out for yourself. Um, all right. So I talked about pulling the pin on something that I've kind of held to
Yes.
myself for a while.
Yeah.
And since we're talking about the spirituality connection, and I started to talk about the fact, isn't it interesting how many people see themselves floating out the window
Mhm.
and through hard walls, brick walls, aliens doing the same thing? Are we dealing with different vibrational energies of who we are and what they are. So, of course, the black-eyed kid phenomenon, I'm sure you're familiar with this, Walter. For
Oh,
our
yeah.
listeners, a quick Reader's Digest version. They are a strange set of beings that are usually young children, anywhere from 6 years old to maybe 12, 13. They've been witnessed. They're very bland in nature. A lot of them seem to wear kind of older clothes, out of style, maybe just black hoodies. They want to follow you someplace. They want you to come with them someplace. It's got this very vampiric, very demonic concept to it.
Yeah.
What's really interesting to me is how this story has begun to build and grow and evolve. We were one of the first shows with my original show that dove into this head first, and we blew up with it. People couldn't get enough of these black-eyed kid stories because they bridge that. First of all, ghostly children are scary on every level, right?
Yeah.
Real children are terrifying. Ghostly children are even worse. Then you start factoring in that these children have jet black eyes, not just the iris, but the entire sclera is jet black.
Yeah.
So in the midst of all of this, I had a dream awakening. I'll say it that way. I've had dream visitations before from the spirit realm. This was something different, but it felt like it was in that same vein. It was very memorable to me, very aesthetic. I could feel, smell, hear. Everything about it was a little alive and buzzing. And I just remember having this dream about seeing a few of the black-eyed kids in this dream, being aware I was in a dream, seeing these black-eyed kids. And I kept thinking, what the hell are these? And this voice came to me and said, now, again, I'm telling you it was a dream.
Mhm.
I cannot tell you or our listeners, and I know this is where I feel like I'm over mansplaining it because I don't want to sound insane, but I'm just going to put it out there. It said, these are empty vessels. These are the hybrids of humanity and another race. They are born without a soul. They come to these places to gather souls of beings that are about to die, so that it's an easy transition into the new vessel.
Yeah.
And I sat back and I'm like, this sounds way too Hollywood.
Yeah.
And I came out of it and I'm like, I got to write a screenplay. And then I'm like, no, there's something that seems very, and this was very early on in this whole discussion. Since then, they've started to talk about, are these beings hybrids? But this is stuff I've not talked really openly about because, again, I didn't want people thinking I'm a loon. But the spirituality, the soul connection, the alien ties, so many people claiming to be parents of hybrids, having these moments, it made sense to me. And when you think about it, and I was given these flashes, I kid you not, the American Revolutionary War, these guys down on their knees with their muskets firing, and then out of just the smoke came these children running at them. And then it was done. And then the battlefield was just strewn with all these bodies of the soldiers. And I thought, well, that's weird. And then I kept seeing flashes of that. And then talking about the black-eyed children, Walter, and you being in the military, maybe you know about this. I had a lot of Afghani and Iraqi war vets, Desert Storm war vets, people that reached out to me that said, I love your show. I'm not really into the paranormal, but I enjoy the entertainment quality of it. But when you started talking about the black-eyed kids, it made my blood run cold. And I cannot go on the record, and I will not go on your show, but you can say that you've heard this from military personnel. And I've had many tell me this without soliciting it and without them knowing it. But many of them have had black-eyed kid encounters prior to something horrible happening. And that seems to bleed into this whole concept of then were the black-eyed kids there, not harbingers of death in the sense of they're bringing it, but they're there to cull the spirits so that the spirits can live on in these new vessels. I don't know. Boom, my brain's blown out on that. But how do you feel about that concept tying into this theology of what we've been discussing this evening?
To me, it seems it has a logical, it fits thematically. I personally think, for instance, reincarnation is a real phenomenon, and
Right.
that rankles some people too. But doesn't matter to me. I'm personally convinced of it, and
When I was young, I used to tell people that I am not from here. When I was very little, I would tell them I'm not from here. I'm from somewhere else, meaning
Mhm.
another planet, but I never really said it. But I
Yeah.
remember having those feelings as a child, and
Yeah.
it tapered away.
Sure,
I'm a
because the
weird
more you
guy.
get
Big head, dark eyes. Maybe I am from another planet, but
the longer you live, the more you get conditioned into this
yeah.
reality. Of course, right? It fades away because, one of my things with the reincarnation, real quick, is that I think that we have, and this isn't, I'm not the first guy to say this, but I think this, we live with kind of this weird block or amnesia of whatever previous lives. And why?
Mhm.
Because we're supposed to pay attention to the life we're living at the time. I think it's
Right.
that simple. I really do.
Mhm.
And that's why this is a mystery to us, because don't dwell on that so much. You're here, you're in a life, you're alive. Focus on why you're here and what you're doing. It's really that simple. And I think what weirds people out is a bunch of dogma gets spun up over the more extraordinary aspects of our reality. And this is where the problem with, we'll say, spiritual organization come in,
Right.
because it gets too diluted with human motives. Okay, and that's where the dogma arises from, and the fear is really a control
Mhm.
thing. So now, not that there's not genuine things to be afraid of. I
Certainly.
I explained earlier the one night I was so creeped out that I went and got a hotel room. Believe me, I'm well aware and well cautious of the darkness and the scary things that are out there, because I also, think and am convinced that there's evil. I think demons are real beings, absolutely, and they're after it. This is why I have trouble, for example, with channeled information. You got to be careful, because no matter how smart and slick and witty a human being thinks they are, they might be channeling something that, these beings are very old, they've been around, they can outsmart us, and they can convince us, mortal humans, that they're Granny or Uncle Joe or something like that. We hear this from exorcists, right? Bishop
Mhm.
James Long is a guy, and he tells some very interesting stories, about this, and so do other experienced, seasoned exorcists. So there is the reason to be concerned, but
Which is why I think people are concerned when we bring up names like Hecate, because it
sure,
has uh, uh,
a connotation, a connection.
a connotation
Yeah.
connection to different things. That then, how do you know that this Hecate is also not part of this realm? We're never going to make everybody happy, but that's the
Right,
whole idea of paradigm shifting, is opening up to new concepts and new
right,
possibilities.
sure.
I know this, Walter, for a fact. I'm going to get emails tonight that are going to say, "When are you going to have Walter back to talk about this serial crime
Okay,
and paranormal stuff?" So I know we're going to have to do that, and
okay,
maybe a bonus true crime on a Tuesday kind of vibe we can
absolutely,
bring back
sure.
to it. And it'll be outside of the realm of the normal paranormal 60, but because it does have
Okay,
paranormal ties and true
yes,
crime, we can spend an hour just dissecting that case and digging into it. So save your time, folks. You don't have to email me. You just heard me put the invitation out. And Walter, we're going to be together at the Fear Fair in San
yes,
Bernardino on Friday the 13th, Saturday the 14th, Sunday the 15th at the Fear Fair, and we'll be there hanging out, talking. And I think I'll probably be emceeing or leading panel discussions that you'll be a part of as well. So I look forward to
okay,
seeing you there and getting a
sure.
chance to talk about this stuff face to face. What would you like to leave our listeners and viewers with tonight
Um,
as you say your parting words?
Let me throw a little tidbit about Fear Fair for you. It takes place
Mhm.
it's going to happen at the National Orange Show grounds. The National Orange Show grounds are formerly this part of this Urbita Springs Park, where a lot of this weird, dark stuff has gone on. So I
Mm.
knew you'd find that interesting, that where we're going to be hanging out is the site of some of this stuff in 1915. But what I'd like to say is, be cautious, but don't let fear grip you, because life here is about your advancement and understanding, I believe, of the soul and your consciousness, and you are here, everybody, no matter who they are, even if they're obscure, nobody knows who they are. Everybody here is here for a reason, and part of that reason could be for someone else. As cheesy as that sounds, it's important, and I think it's true. And understanding your role here and why you're here, I think at some point in everybody's life involves facing this strange, this strange realm of our existence. And certainly as you get closer to your own demise, I think it starts introducing itself and injecting itself to you. And, you know, you'll have a better experience and a more fulfilling experience if you don't let fear grip you. But you can be cautious while not letting fear grip you. You know, it's
I couldn't agree more. I tell people never walk in a place of fear. That just robs you of the opportunity.
because of the bad things feed on that
right,
fear. They
right.
want you to be afraid, and you know, you're not supposed to be.
That's right. That's right. Like we said, fear is good to a degree because
Mhm.
it inspires us and it
Yeah,
pushes us, but let that be something that lifts you, not holds you back.
right.
Walter Bosley, our guest. Thank you so much for being here, Walter.
Thank you, Dave. I really enjoyed this. I look forward to doing it again.
We'll do it soon. So, what did you think of the information that we shared here tonight? Was any of this shocking, confusing, or maybe exactly as you've always thought? Put your comments below or email them to me here at dave@paranormal60.com. Exploring out of the box thinking, looking beyond the normal or expected is the goal that we should each seek, not just to better ourselves, but to allow us to live a more full and rich life, a life where information and imagination are allowed to coexist and flourish. For life happens in those in between spaces. Will you be paying attention? I'd like to thank my guest, Walter Bosley, for being here with us this evening, spending this time sharing his insights and ideas. You can find more information about our guest and how to get his books on the links that I've included on tonight's program guide. And thank you all for visiting the Paranormal 60, allowing me along on this journey. And may the darkness be just a little more light with the information that we share here. Each week, we explore interesting theories and beliefs, experiences and histories of the world's strangest mysteries. Remember, being open minded to new concepts is how we grow. So grow, my little darklings, grow. Make sure to like this video and this podcast, subscribe, tell everybody you know about it, and wherever you listen to this podcast, if they allow rating and stars and reviews, please think about doing that for me. It would mean the world to me, and it helps give us more exposure. Until next Friday, my friends, we will be back on Friday with the best in Paranormal 60 news. The whole news crew will be here. I hope you will too, right here with me, Dave Schrader, on the Paranormal 60.